Hey team, I got another great question from Nathan Aguirre. He's another one of the athletes that I work with personally, and he was asking about altitude training and my viewpoints of altitude training, and is altitude training good for runners? I spent about 7.5 years of my military career at Fort Carson in Colorado Springs. Fort Carson's situated at just about 6,000 feet altitude, so I did spend several years training at altitude. Definitely, there is an advantage training at altitude versus training at sea level. You're producing more red blood cells training at altitude, and then when you come down to race at sea level, in most cases you're going to add an advantage versus somebody that's living and training at sea level. But that being said, some of the best distance runners I've trained with and raced with over the years, they didn't live or train at altitude. Okay, if you look at the great runners from the Hanson's group, they're out in Michigan, which is sea level. So a lot of even these athletes, they train at sea level, and there is definitely advantages to both sea level training as well as altitude training. When you're training at altitude, your paces definitely are affected because of the less amount of oxygen that's up at those heights, versus if you were doing, say, repeat 800s or repeat miles at sea level. Your times at sea level are naturally going to be much faster than versus if you're training at 6,000, 7,000 feet. I personally did like training out in Colorado because, again, it is a psychological benefit to you as well, because you know that you're living and training at high altitude, and if you go down to sea level, it's a psychological benefit, and you know that, hey, I've trained at 6,000 up to around 10. Even some places I trained with, trained at were up toward around 10,000 feet or higher. Leadville, I spent some time out in Leadville training as well. But definitely, recovery definitely takes a little bit more time at altitude. Your paces are definitely affected if you're training at altitude versus at sea level. But like I said, there's benefits to both of them. There's world-class performances and performers that live and train at sea level that run faster than athletes that live and train at altitude. So it's not like a guarantee that if you are living and training at altitude that you're going to outrun athletes that are living and training at sea level. Okay, like I've talked about in other videos, you can talk about fast marathon courses or finding a fast course to race on the roads, but unless that athlete is prepared properly and has really trained him or herself to sustain that goal race pace that they're aiming for, it doesn't matter how flat the course is. If that athlete isn't prepared, no course is going to be fast regardless how fit you are. Okay, if you go out way too fast and you go into oxygen debt and you're forced to slow down, that course isn't going to be fast either. So you have to focus on training smarter rather than harder, as I talk about. That's kind of like the philosophy of RunDreamAchieve.com, is really focusing on leverage. What do I need to do to get better results than my competitors? And is doing higher mileage a guarantee? Is training at altitude a guarantee that I'm going to drop an hour off of my marathon time, or to qualify for the USA Track and Field Championships, or trying to drop time in your particular event? Altitude training is definitely important. I definitely think that athletes that have trained at sea level all of their lives definitely should try to go out to altitude, or try to spend some time, a few months, training at altitude, or maybe a couple years if you have the opportunity to live at altitude, and then go down to sea level and see how you feel and see how you perform. Again, if you're living out at altitude and you're training at altitude, again, you have much less oxygen. Your body does produce more red blood cells, so your body is very efficient at oxygen transport and oxygen carrying capacity because you have more red blood cells. But again, you have to focus on also your nutrition, your hydration practices. If you're running low on potassium or running low on iron or ferritin, it doesn't matter how much motivation you have. If you're low on those components of the blood, you are not going to perform at the type of level that you're dreaming about, regardless of how well prepared you are, because ferritin and iron play a crucial role in oxygen transport throughout the body and overall cellular health. So make sure that you're focusing on eating the right amount of foods or supplementing your diet with maybe a 65 milligram tablet of iron with some orange juice, because vitamin C helps the body absorb iron more readily. So keep that in mind. If you're training at very high altitudes, most of the world's best middle to long distance runners live and train at altitude. Okay, if you look at the top athletes from Africa and Ethiopia, those athletes are training up at very high elevations, anywhere from 5,000 to 8,000 feet. So they don't really focus so much of their time training at sea level. But there are a lot of, like I said before, there are a lot of world-class middle to long distance runners who live and train at sea level and run as fast or faster than the athletes that train and live at altitude. So that's kind of my overall viewpoint of it. I think that your mindset is really what is key, regardless of where you're at, and in terms of your preparation, making sure that you're spending a higher percentage of your weekly volume training at paces that are as fast or significantly faster than the goal race pace that you're aiming for, that you focus on consistent training and making sure that you're not running too much of your weekly volume too aerobically, too easily, okay? Because running easy is still important, but if you're really trying to run a faster mile time, a faster 5K, a faster 10K marathon, you have to stress the energy systems adequately enough and often enough in order to start seeing some really big results in your training. I'm a big believer, and I talk about this in other videos. If you're new to the channel, definitely hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so when I make new videos, you'll be notified of it. But I'm a big believer in faster long runs. Okay, if you're running long, slow, and easy every single weekend, yes, you're going to be very, very strong in terms of your endurance, but in terms of your strength and stamina, when you go up against somebody that has really focused on working on their speed development, they're very focused on doing VO2 max workouts in the form of hill repetitions or track workouts or road workouts, like repeat thousands on the roads. Those types of athletes that are really that are consistent with their speed development, but are also doing faster long runs, you're going to have a very hard time trying to outrun those particular athletes. And it's not just because if they're running faster than you right now, it's not just because they're talented. Okay, I've known a lot of athletes that were very talented too, but didn't work very hard. But I've known a lot of athletes over the years as well that didn't have a great deal of genetic talent, but had an enormous amount of work ethic. Okay, that's what I had. I only had so much speed. I only had so much ability to run from the mile to the 5K distance at certain speeds. But my strength was the longer distances and overall the shorter distances when I was younger. But I improved because of my work ethic, and I knew I didn't have that much genetic talent, but I knew if I could stay consistent over a long enough period of time, I could make up for what I lacked in talent with my work ethic. So if you're lacking in genetic talent, don't let that be something that's going to bother you. Okay, just know that a genetically gifted athlete is going to get faster results than you. But that being said, if you're consistent enough and you're persistent with what you're doing, you can match what they've done. And it might just it's going to take you a little bit longer, but if you want to get to that step, if you want to qualify for the Boston Marathon, or you want to drop 10 pounds, you have to be consistent with what you're doing on a daily basis. You can't just be lukewarm about your preparation. Okay, the best athletes, the best businessmen and women out there, the best teachers, people that are really great at what they're doing, they're consistent over a long period of time. They're not just lukewarm. They're not just interested in being good at what they do. They're fully committed. They want success, and they're willing to do whatever it's going to take in order to get to what they truly want. So I hope this video is helpful for you all, especially those that are thinking about or wondering if altitude training is the silver bullet. Is that really a guarantee? I certainly think there are definitely huge benefits to training at altitude, but just know that it's not a guarantee, because again, you can still get great results training at sea level. But definitely, if you haven't trained at altitude before, definitely consider going out to those higher elevations and spending some time out there, and then trying to and then go down to sea level and see how you perform and see how it affects you. Again, every athlete's different, so what works best for me might not work best for you. But I hope this video is helpful for all of you that are wondering about altitude training and wanted to hear from an athlete that has lived out there. And it definitely helped me. I would definitely feel like that altitude training was a part of me breaking the 2 hour and 20-minute marathon barrier. Okay, because again, I was training at 6,000 feet and I ran the 2:19:35 PR in Sacramento, California. So it does have an effect, but I also was outrun by some athletes that weren't training at altitude. And there's athletes out there that are running much faster times than I ever ran for the marathon or track times that I ran, that live and train at sea level. So I wish you all the best. Keep me posted on your training. Leave a comment below if you have any questions. Like and share these videos. I definitely appreciate the support. And check out the resources below all my videos as well. They're there to help you out. So I wish you all the best, and I'll talk to you in the next video.